and understand the importance of true freedom, democracy, the chance to determine and be a part, not only outside of the system, which dictates who you are, what you do, how you move and everything, but be a part of determining part of the system itself.
And you know we have to dig into that, especially with everything that's happening around the country with Black Lives Matter, fights for racial equality, for justice. Are there lessons to be taken away? Of course there are, but which ones stand out the most for you in terms of alliances and people working together?
Well, I think the alliances come, if I may suggest it, think about this. This is the decade of the African descendant. Started in January 2015 for the next decade to January 2024. The decade of African descendant. So what can we do with this moment? You know, we haven't acknowledged it. African descendants haven't acknowledged. You have the opening of a museum, but I don't think that was ever mentioned in the conversation last weekend. You have a president, a black president. I don't think it's been ever mentioned, the decade of African descendants, the whole time. We're not just talking about African Americans here. We represent a small number of people here. There are 100 million African descendants, self-defined African descendants in Haiti. In Brazil. There are, in the peace agreement with the FARC was important because out of the 4 million internally displaced Colombians, over 2 million were Afro-descendant. We don't know that when we talk about that. What does that mean in a sense? What does that mean? You take like a program like Petro Caribe that it was instituted by President Chavez from Venezuela. Petro Caribe provided discount oil for countries in the Caribbean countries, CARICOM countries, and on that they were provided loans to pay for the oil. They were not only provided loans to pay for the oil. If they took what would have been their payment for the loans, the payment of the oil, and put it back to the infrastructure, the loans were dissolved. We don't know that, but the United States worked aggressively to try to get rid of that program. You know, we saw what happened on the East Coast when oil was provided by Citgo to people who in New York, in Jersey, and other places like this. Those are the kind of relationships that need to develop. They're not only relationships from nation to nation, they're relationships to people and people to people, people to people. Those are the key points that I think we have to understand. So this moment is a great moment to align ourselves with the issues, not only here in this country, but the issues of the rest of the world. You know, I remember when campaigning with Bernie Sanders, you know, one of the discussions that we were always having were about the issues beyond just our borders and the influence that this country has on issues around this border, around the border. And I think since we've been blind to that to some degree, and we have not had the kind of political acculturation to understand the relationship of what happens to us here and what happens in other people's world. I think we've missed an opportunity. But that was a part of what this was. You know, all of us who were involved in African Liberation Support Committee in the early 70s, all of us who were involved, all of us who remember about Quita Carnival. I remember that moment. I remember the moment when Angola received, and Guinea-Bissau and Mozambique received its independence because of the overthrow of the Portuguese dictatorship in 1974.
And you said you remembered Fidel and Nelson as well, Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I was there when in Pretoria in 1994 when Fidel went to shake Mandela's hand to congratulate him, and he pushed his hand away, and Mandela pushed his hand away and hugged him and said to him, and it was audible on tape, you never hear it, without you this doesn't happen. You saw, there it is right. He said to, without you, he tells Fidel, without you, this doesn't happen. And this is the truth. You saw him directing the whole battle for Cuitlacanova, right from Havana, and everything. But all the decision that because his release was part of the agreement. It was a part of the agreement. This is the kind of information we don't have. And I suppose a different kind of way of looking at history, not from those who consider themselves the arbitrators or the definers of history, but those people on the ground. And those are the challenges we have to look at, whether it's climate change, right here in North Dakota, right here, the valiant fight that First Nation people putting up around the issue of the pipeline in North Dakota. On all of those kind of victories, all of those are things that are happening right here. How do we support that? You know, how do we begin to understand that the real dangers in climate change and the impact that it has on us already, has had on us already. Look at Louisiana, perfect example. Look at Louisiana.
All right, so at this time, we'll actually open up questions to the audience. You can raise your hand, ask a question, and I'll repeat it so that way everybody can hear it. Yes?